'cause I'll be in a Mayberry state of mind.
Daryl Mosley is in a Mayberry state of mind. His new album, A Life Well Lived, looks back to a time when growing up in the U.S. seemed much simpler. So, are these songs drawn from Daryl's own life?
You'll see neighbor helping neighbor.
I don't write autobiographical very much, but I do like to write about what I'm familiar with, and so I mean I love that whole idea of living in an area kind of Andy Griffith-ish, where everybody knows everybody and takes care of one another, and faith and family and all of that is really important. And I grew up that way and still live in a town that kind of embraces that. And I think there's a longing for that. People either also grew up that way and misses that slower pace and that mindset, or they kind of wish they did, and I mean, I think we all appreciate the technology and the way the advantages and the benefits now, but sometimes I think we all would love to slow down just a little bit, and which is the appeal, I believe, still to shows like the Andy Griffith Show after all these years. And so my songs are, for all practical purposes, kind of a soundtrack to that mindset.
Right. So I moved to New Zealand in '94, so I've been here for a while, and it's interesting to see what's going on in the States from outside, from a different perspective. And so a lot of the things that we see aren't particularly positive these days. It seems like the country is in a bit of strife. So, how do you relate to that when you're singing about, Andy of Mayberry?
As often as I can, I try to avoid it. I try to stay out of it. I mean, everything is measured by politics now,
Right.
Which political side you're on. Everything is measured by that. And I just try not to get wrapped up in that. I just, I tend to, I still enjoy, a good book and an old John Wayne movie, and, things that are just, from a different era. And so I just kind of focus on that. And I think that's part of the appeal to some of my songs.
Sure.
It's kind of a break from some of that,
Yep. So when you were putting this record together, did you have that in mind? Do you go into making a record? I think this is your third solo album with an idea, a plan of attack, as it were, or do you just have some songs lying around and see what happens?
No, I'm a little bit that way. I mean, there's some songs that are a little older that I've brought out to record. Some are, were written specifically for this project. And I don't necessarily didn't start out to write a concept album, which is in essence kind of what this album is. But I realized years ago that, I have, and not just me, but any recording artist has this really unique opportunity to leave behind a body of work. There may come a day when I have grandchildren or great grandchildren, and they never know me, but all they'll ever know about me is what they learn from the songs. Right. And so I try to write songs that line up with the things I believe in, the things that are important to me, memories that I have, and hopefully along the way it'll trigger other memories from other people. It seems to, and so I'm hoping, like I said, that the image that people have from me, if they draw that from those songs, I want that to be accurate.
Right. So and you work with a guy named Rick Lang. I think he's co-written a few of the songs with you, and does he co-produce with you as well?
No, Rick just writes. Rick lives in New Hampshire and is just one of the best guys I've ever known. Passionate songwriter, and so we write a lot. And so we have 4 or 5 songs on the album. The rest I think I wrote myself. But no, Danny Roberts and I were in the band New Tradition all through the '90s, and Danny he loves the studio, and he's got great studio ears. And so when I went in to start recording the very first solo album, I asked Danny to come in and co-produce with me, and he's done that on all the subsequent albums.
All right. Well, one song I wanted to kind of touch on was Walking Man. What has inspired you to write that one?
One foot and then the other, step by step he stayed the course, thinking only about others, listening to the master's voice, moving with a purpose, faithful to the plan, and focused on the mighty task at hand. he was a walking man.
When I was a kid, actually long before that, there was a gentleman in our little town named Mr. John L. Mays. Mr. John was a black man who was severely autistic. But Mr. John would walk every morning, and every day he would walk to the hospital and visit with the sick, and he would walk to the nursing home and visit with those, and he would end up at the funeral home and visit with the families of the bereaved. And we just, as a community, we just loved him, and he loved us, and this went on for many, many years. And when he finally passed away in 2017, of course, the huge funeral. But to this day, if you go to his gravestone, above the dates and everything and his name is a carved picture of him, and above that it says the Walking Man, because people who saw him and didn't know him by name recognized him for his walk. And so I thought about him and other men who had an impact on people, largely by walking. And so the song, it talks about him and Dr. Martin Luther King and Jesus Christ. They're all a part of that song.
Okay. And the other one I wanted to touch on was Hillbilly Graham. Is that based on anyone in particular?
He was saved when he was 7. By 17, he'd been called to preach. From the hills of Carolina, his field was wide with many souls to reach. With no formal education or preaching school to help him with his call. Just a solid faith in Jesus and a Bible in his front bib overall.
But I have a friend here who's actually a former pastor in our town, and Brother Charles Martin. He's a great guy, funny, just naturally funny, just a country boy. But sometime along the way, he picked up that nickname. And the first time I heard it, I fell out laughing. I thought, oh, that's a song in the making, Right. So finally sat down and wrote the song. And, I had somebody tell me, they said, I think that song is the Harper Valley PTA of bluegrass music. And I understood what they meant, because it does have kind of a twist at the end, and
Yep.
but it is one of the most fun things I do live. People really like that one when I'm performing live.
Right. So when you're performing live, what kind of interaction do you have with folks? Is it from the stage? Do you hang out afterwards? Do people share their stories with you?
Yeah, that's the fun part for me. Is I have so many people will come up after a concert and they'll say, "You made me think of things I hadn't thought about in years," or I swear I think you grew up next door to me, because our memories are so similar. And which is a huge compliment, because that's what I want. Is I don't want them just to hear my story. I want them to find their own story within the songs. And so I get lots of that, and lots of stories. They'll share their experiences with me, and that's to me been the best part of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I notice you're a baseball fan.
Oh, big time.
Big time. I just reacquainted myself with the game this year. It's hard to find it around here, but I do still play softball. But and now I realize they have all the changes of the rules. The game's kind of zip by a little quicker and all that. So what's your thoughts on that?
I tend to be a purist, but it really hasn't bothered me, because I think the pitch clock and all of that, what it has done, what it cut out was all of the stepping out of the box and readjusting the gloves and all of the downtime. And so now the game itself moves pretty quick, but the action's a little faster, and it doesn't bother me. I like it really well.
I think, like I said, I haven't watched it in a while. Just the quality of the play is amazing, and the athleticism of these guys playing is better than I remember. I mean, I saw my first baseball game, I think it was in Cleveland in 1966 against the Yankees. So it's going back a ways.
Oh, wow. That's great.
I think Roger Maris.
That's one of the things. Oh, how awesome. That's great. That's one of the things I try to do when I'm on the road, is try to catch games. And I went to PNC Park in Pittsburgh last year. First time I'd seen it. It's a beautiful stadium. And, I went to Camden Yards in Baltimore last year, and I saw a Phillies game in Philadelphia. So that's just one of the things I'll try to catch when I can, and really enjoy doing that.
Right. And who's your team?
We don't have one, obviously, in Tennessee. So a lot of it is proximity.
Right.
A lot of people in this area are either Cardinals fans or Braves fans. I'm a big Cardinals and Cubs fan, which you're not supposed to be able to like both, but I'll watch whoever's on,
Right.
and but I mean, I'm easy to please when it comes to a baseball game. Many is the time out on the road I've driven past and saw a little league game happening, and I'll whip in and watch a couple of innings just to see the kids play. I just love the sport.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So now that you've got a life well lived out and about, what are you thinking about doing next? Are you thinking about it next, or are you just kind of in the middle of this?
No, there's always you're always kind of looking ahead. There is some discussion about potentially doing a live album for next year.
Oh, okay.
Storytelling is a big part of what I do live, and I have lots of people ask about, do you have something that has the stories on it? And so we're looking at maybe potentially doing a live album so we can incorporate some of the stories and some of the things we do live.
Gotcha. And do you think of yourself as a storyteller?
Yeah, I think probably more than anything else is, and I enjoy that aspect of it. And, not only the spoken part of it, in between the songs, but the songs themselves. And those were always the songs that resonated with me and still are, when a really great story. And, everybody from Tom T. Hall to Guy Clark, to Billy Joel,
Yep.
tell really great stories in their songs.
Yep. All right. And were those folks who kind of got you thinking about writing songs as well?
Largely, I mean, the very first album I ever bought was Billy Joel's 52nd Street, and
Right.
and it's funny, I can listen to it now, and I mean, I've been to New York City, but at the time I hadn't, and I had this visual of what living in New York would have been like based on his stories, and those songs still work with me, and it's the same way with Tom T. Hall. He would write about rural America and
Yep.
those people and their stories, and so yeah, those were big influences as far as wanting to tell the stories that I want to tell and tell them as accurately as I can.
Yeah. Wasn't it the Everly Brothers? They had a song called "Oh, the Stories We Could Tell."
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you for sharing those the album and time with me. It's very nice of you. Hopefully, get down to New Zealand sometime and sing a few songs if you ever get around to it.
I would love to do that. Yeah, I have never done a tour overseas. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
It's just something we've never. About the time we started really getting serious about it, COVID happened and that slowed the works up.
Yeah.
But that's certainly one of the things I'm looking at doing in the next year or so is doing some dates abroad.
All righty. Well, hopefully that'll happen. Thank you very much, and have a great day.